Good morning, children. How are you all? I hope all of you are fine, safe inside your homes. Now, today we are going to continue with the same chapter, that is globe, latitudes and longitudes. I repeat, we are going to continue with the second chapter in geography, that is globe, latitudes and longitudes. So now let us first understand the topic of heat zones. Now we have already studied the concept of latitudes. So now here we are going to study first all the heat zones and then longitudes. So now let us start with the heat zones. So what are heat zones? Heat zones are the different zones of the earth where the sun rays fall differently, thus causing different climate patterns. Where the sun rays are falling differently. What are heat zones? Heat zones are those places where there are different zones of the earth where sun rays are falling differently on according to their different climate patterns. So these zones are called torrid zones, temperate zones and frigid zones. I repeat, so these zones are called torrid zones, temperate zones and frigid zones. So now let us start with the first one, that is torrid zones. So now what do you understand by the word torrid, or what do you understand by the torrid zones? So the midday sun is exactly overhead at least once a year. The midday sun is exactly overhead at least once a year, and so on all the latitudes in between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So on all the latitudes in between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, when sun is overhead at least once a year, this is what we call that torrid zone. So it receives the maximum heat. So what you need to remember is, in the torrid zone maximum heat is being received. Why? Because sun is at least once a year on these places between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So you need to remember is that torrid zone receives the maximum heat. Next we have is temperate zones. So now what are temperate zones? The midday sun never shines overhead on any latitude between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So it does not shine overhead on any latitude between Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. So the angle of the sun's rays goes on decreasing towards the poles. So the angle of the sun's rays is going on decreasing towards the poles. So these have moderate temperatures, not too much heat and not too less heat. So this is about temperate zones where we have it in the moderate temperatures, where there is not too much heat and not so less heat. And lastly we have is frigid zone. Now it comes from the word freeze, free, F-R-I. So that is what? That is a very, so these are the places which are very cold. So now areas lying between Arctic Circle and North Pole in the northern hemisphere and Arctic Circle and South Pole in the southern hemisphere, they are very cold. So what I said, it comes from the word frigid, freeze, the word frigid comes from the word freeze, which means very cold. So these areas, these places are very cold, and it is because here the sun does not rise much above the horizon. The sun does not rise much above the horizon. So that is why here the sun rays are very much where there is here minimum heat is there. Why? Because the sun does not rise above the horizon. So this is what we understand by frigid zones, where we can say that the least heat, the least heat is being over here. So this is what we understand by the heat zones, where there are three different zones: torrid zones, temperate zones and frigid zones. Torrid zone maximum heat, temperate zone minimum, that is moderate heat, and frigid zone, that is least heat, what we can say. So now let us move to the next part, which is Greenwich. So now what do you understand by Greenwich? Greenwich is a place in UK, that is United Kingdom, near London, whose time is measured as standard all over the world. So it is a place in earlier times where whose time was measured as standard all over the world. The prime meridian passes through this place, and so it is a place that divides earth into eastern and western hemisphere. The prime meridian, now what is prime meridian we will be studying. The prime meridian passes through this place and it divides this place into eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. So now what is prime meridian first? The meridian which passes through Greenwich, where the British Royal Observatory is located. So this meridian is considered as the prime meridian. The meridian which is passing through Greenwich, where the British Royal Observatory is located, so this is known as prime meridian. Its value is 0 longitude and we count 180 degree eastward and also 180 degree westwards. So its value is 0 degree longitude, where we count 180 eastwards and 180 westwards also. So now the prime meridian and 180 degree meridian divides the earth into two halves, that is eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. So it is dividing it into two halves, that is eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. So this is what we mean by prime meridian. Next we have is longitudes. So now what are longitudes? One of the imaginary circles which are parallel to the prime meridian is called longitudes. What were latitudes? Those imaginary circles which were parallel to the equator. And what are longitudes? Those imaginary circles which are parallel to the prime meridian. So this is the difference between latitude and longitude. These longitudes have their centers at the center of the earth and have same radius. In latitudes there were different radii, that is RADII, but in longitudes we have same radius as the earth. So now what is standard time? Standard time of a country or a region is the time which is regarded as standard for that place, despite the fact that there exist times different geographically across the region. So according to the different regions, different geographies, we have different times. So it is only used for our convenience that we have a standard time which exists at standard for that place. So for India we have Indian Standard Time, that is IST. So now we will compare longitude and time. So the best means of measuring time is by the movement of Earth, Moon and the planets. So how can you measure the time? So the best means are by the movement of Earth, Moon and the planets. The sun regularly rises and sets every day. When the prime meridian of Greenwich has sun at its highest point in the sky, all the places along this meridian will have a midday or a noon. Why is it that? Because from there we get to know the longitudes. Greenwich or prime meridian, it is only through them we get to know the longitudes. And so when the prime meridian or the Greenwich has the sun at its highest position in the sky, so all the places nearby will have a midday or a noon. So as the earth rotates from west to east, those places east of Greenwich will be ahead of Greenwich time and those to the west will be behind it. So this is all we know. This is because of the earth rotating. So this is how we can understand the concept of longitude and time. So now why do we have standard time? Is there any need of any such standard time? So the local time of places which are on the different meridians is bound to differ. So there are places where the times will be different. In India, for example, there will be a difference about 1 hour 45 minutes in the local times of Dwarka, which happens to be in Gujarat, and Dirburg, which happens to be in Assam. So in India, at the longitude of 82 and half east is treated as the standard meridian. It is treated as the standard meridian. The local time of this meridian is taken as the Indian Standard Time, which is for the whole of the country. You must be visiting, if any one of you has visited out of country, that is abroad, then you must be knowing that we will be having two different times. The timing of that country will be different and the timing of our country India would be different. For India we have Indian Standard Time. So according to the places which are located in different geographical areas, we will have time. So for example, if I am staying in USA, so my time would be different. I would be some 15 hours late or 15 hours early as compared to the timings which are there in India. So if it is day over here, there might be night over there. So this is what we understand by the standard time. For India, which we have is Indian Standard Time, that is IST. So the full form of IST you have to remember, Indian Standard Time. So that was it for today. We will have a quick recap of all those things which we have studied today. So we starting from heat zones, where we studied torrid zone, temperate zone and frigid zone. Next was what are longitudes. Then we had studied what is Greenwich, what is prime meridian. Then we had longitudes and time, and lastly we had standard time. So why do we need standard time, or why do we have standard time? So that was it for today. I hope all of you have understood this chapter and have also enjoyed it, and that was it for today. Thank you and have a nice day.